Like, yeah, thank you for coming for this event. Yeah, this event is titled Understanding Human Behavior, and especially through evolutionary perspective, right? So for me, it's like one of our desire is to be on the top, right? To be the fittest, and because the like the dove, right, of evolution is to survive and reproduce, or to be the fittest, right? Survival of the fittest. But in modern era, right, we are now more uh, have a knowledge about the past, right? So we learn more about our history. So now we will understand how we react, right, to certain stimulus, or how we react on problems, right, based on our evolutionary desire to survive. Yeah. So yeah. So to start, right, we can start from a story. When I was a kid, I live in one of the farmlands in Bulacan, right? If you know where it is. So we live in a nipa house just near the river, right? And what's amazing about this story is that we have these beautiful hunting dogs, and these dogs are trained to hunt wild birds, right? We're not hunting for fun, right? We're hunting for survival. We're hunting for dinner, right? And with my brother, right, with our teamwork and with these dogs, only a few of the wild birds survive, right? And these dogs are really loyal to us because they know that when we get home, we can cook and feed for them. Yeah. And yeah, wild birds are really fast, right? They can walk very fast, and they can fly in a higher latitude that we cannot catch them. So it's like the moral of this story is that from a human perspective, right, from my brother, or from my father, we can use our skills, right, our idea about topology of those spaces to corner these birds, right, so we can eat. On perspective of the dogs, right, so we can be dependent to a system. It could be the nature, or it could be the governance, right, so we can survive. And you can see like relationship between other species, that we can be dependent to something and get some benefits from that, right? On the bird side, right, we can use our like extreme emotion, right, like adrenaline rush, usually associated with fear, so to survive and escape or use our skills. The- because birds, are really small, right? So their own advantage is to just walk very fast and fly, right? So any species, right, regardless of our conditions, or even animals or plants, right, have these characteristics that we need to survive, right, and reproduce. And that's the main thing, a concept of survival, right? So no matter your condition, rich, right, or poor, whatever religion or color, we all have the desire to uh, work and get some food from our environment. Yeah. So yeah, this group is like more not just about intellectual discussion, right? So that's one thing. And of course, we are a social group, right? So uh, at every end of the slides, we have a mini discussions. If you like, you can open yourself, because in my experience, uh, especially in intellectual discussions, it's kind of monopolized by some smart guy. Then, and in this event, we kind of try to make kind of a sharing part in the slides. So, any question from that introduction, or anything you want to add? Survival, any survival stories? Yeah, it doesn't need to be a jungle type. Yeah.
Survival. I remember reading something. What's this? But I do remember it's about a miner. Natsume Soseki, the miner. So basically, it's about a miner who comes from a rich family and runs away from home. And then when he was, of course, mining underground, he was thinking that he could die anytime. But later he said, if I see a ray of light, just a tiny speck of light, I think I'll survive. So it's like, oh, I'm ready to go to the darkness, but a tiny speck of light can just make me go back and basically survive the harsh conditions of the mining, uh, mining in general.
Yeah,
So yeah, it just reminded me of that.
yeah. You know, in terms of like calamity, right?
Yeah.
Or like we are no food. Our first instincts is actually just to survive. We're just in the time or in the era where the time of prosperity, right? But in terms of war or calamity or sickness, what we need is just to get food, right? And if things go bad, really bad, we'll return to planting rice and vegetables. And that's what we really have. And it's just amazing that we live in a century, right, or decade that we have this amazing technology, right? And we don't worry about the survival thing, right? Yeah, I think that's what the main concept here.
Yeah, do you remember 2017, 2018, when those Thai boys got stuck in that cave?
Hmm?
Sometimes, I don't know why, but when you're talking about and being in the cold and seeing that light, hey, you think about that, 'cause they were stuck in there for like 20 days or something.
Mhm.
In pitch black darkness with no food.
Mm.
And the only water they had was like this muddy rainwater. And then after 20 days of just, I mean, a dozen or so boys down there, a scuba diver with a headlamp just shows up. Kind of like that light you're talking about.
Mm.
That kind of makes me think about that. And they couldn't like leave the community, right? They had to recover because some of them are. Yeah, exactly. They'd be really careful how they dragged them out of that cave because they were so fragile.
Mm.
No, trying my best not to bring in that little muscles. But yeah, there's some controversy. But yeah, a lot of people try to help with the rescue and yeah. Um, but yeah, that is a hell of a survival story.
Yeah, yeah.
That those boys went through, They made a movie about it. Did it? I mean, they should. They pitch black darkness for 3 weeks,
Yeah.
with no food.
Yeah, they just want to survive, right, and extend their life for
And,
a little bit longer.
and they all
That's really cool.
meeting like one got together. Yeah. A lot of people volunteered their own effort. Yeah. It's very dangerous. Kind of like the whole world stopped them on, but hey, let's help people out.
And then, yeah, before we proceed to understanding human behavior, we need first to establish what is Darwinian in a way, right? What is evolution, and is it true or is just kind of a hearsay, right? So in this slide, we kind of tackle that evolution, right, is not just a made up or it has a intellectual or can be proven, right? So so how it is started, right? If you want to study life, right, or the origin of life, we need to go back to the first entity, which is the replicating entity, right, or the first cell bacteria. It could be a cell, right? But if you want to go deeper, you need to study the structure of the DNA, right? So to have a good working protein, right, that's around 150 amino acids that kind of arrange themselves into a strain of molecules, right? So the chances that you have that working DNA is like 1 is to 10 to the 164. That is astoundingly very small, right, probability. Yeah. Because it's like amino acids, like you need to switch and you get a different combination, right? And there are 150 amino acids that need to be formed, right? So the chances that you get a good working protein is like very small, that it is even less than the probability that you win the grand lotto and hit by a lightning at the same time, right? Yeah, yeah. So that's a really low probability, right? But of course, this one is debated, right? The origin of life, of course, from theist and atheist group, right? That this small probability can be only described or can be explained only by creator, right? That God set the first life, then let it evolve, right? And of course, in ATS, right, or naturalist or materialist perspective, right, creators does just that. It does not make sense to them, right? Because you just need a good working protein to and let it happen, right, and evolve into animals and eventually to human being. Yeah, and so if you are evolved from a single cell amoeba, right, or it could be a similar cell, right, then we must have a relation between other species, right? So there's a study called homology, right? So where a study about the similarity between the bone structure of animals. So at first look, if you compare the hand of the human, cat, whale, and bat, you might say that, oh, they are all different, right? So bat can have a kind of a wing type, right? And whale has kind of a long. But if you look closer, right? So there's a similarity in bone structure, and the evolution have kind of evolved this bone depending on the current state of the usage, right? Because if you don't need this gene, right, then this gene cannot be replicated, right? Or if this gene cannot survive during calamity, right, maybe extreme condition, so this gene can be erased, right, through in history, and it will be replaced by a gene that capable of surviving in a harsh condition. Yeah, that's a kind of a concept of natural selection, but we will discuss that one in the next slide. Yeah. Richard Dawkins makes a good representation about timescales in evolution because people kind of complain evolution is not true, they say, because they do not say human uh, came from a monkey, right? That a monkey gave birth to a human. That's a really weird claim, right? Uh, because we are saying that we came from a chimpanzees, right, or gorillas. But if we let's say my left shoulder is the origin of life, like the first DNA, and the end of my at the tip of my finger in my right hand is the modern times or the 21st century. If you take a dust in my right hand, it only represents the human part of evolution. So that is how time scale works in evolution, right? So because we're talking here billions of years, and the first life is around 3.5 to 4 billion years, right? And human being, the Homo sapiens, is around here for 700 million years around. So having a billion years like is like having a thousand or million years, right? That's a lot, yeah. To put it in our perspective, if you have $1 billion, right? Imagine having 1,000 of that, right? So that's how big a billion years, right? And 3.5 is like having 3.5 of those, yeah, on top of those years. So, so what you're seeing now is like the Hills plot, where the center is the first life, right? Consider first life, and evolve into like because life is about cutting itself, right, into, especially if we're talking into a cell or bacteria, it replicates itself again and again, and eventually it becomes to a complex. And we have different kingdoms, right, like animals, plants, and other. I'm not so familiar with other kingdoms, but you can see from the slides.
Circle and spin. I don't think I understand. Fine.
Yeah, yeah, yes. So the outer ring represents all the species we have now. Yeah, yeah. So,
Better know.
huh?
Better know.
Yeah, yeah, known for sure. Yeah. So we have a bottom-up design argument for evolution, right? Because you can see from like you can see the evidence also in the like museum, like bone, like bone of a Homo erectus or similarity with other like fossils and something, right? And yeah, So I think that's it for this slide. Any additional comment from this? Okay, I think we have now the natural and the artificial selection. I think this is the last slide for understanding how evolution works. Yeah. So what is natural selection, right? So it's like we humans or any species, right, evolve depending on the current state, right? Like a bacteria or virus, they evolve based on the medication given, right? So we evolve based on the current state of condition. So one example of natural selection is the like the giraffe, right? So giraffe takes food from a certain kind of tree, right? And this tree keep growing and growing. So those giraffe that have a shorter neck, right, cannot cannot survive in the long run, right? Since their gene cannot be replicated to the next generation. So those giraffe have a higher neck, are the only the one that can be replicated. So as years goes by, right, the giraffe become taller in neck. So and in a human story, right, like we have, of course, we have the chance to pick our partner, right? We have that. Of course, a human being are highly complex individual, right? But we do have a notion of a natural selection. We select our partner, and we have selection criteria for that, right? So for male, we have the yeah we select a partner that is kind of a healthy, that kind of capable of reproducing, right? And for female, I'm not female, but for what I understand, right, females select like a provider type, right, or the one that can protect themselves. and and that's the duty of a male, right, born with a physical advantage. So this is like our duty, right, to protect our dependents, right, because of our physique, right. And I think that's pretty much the natural selection. We will not go deeper so much on these topics, but you can add if you like later. So for artificial selection, right, one of the main example of artificial selection is like Chihuahua, right? Yeah, yeah. So if you let just a natural selection to do it, right, in the wild, right, you cannot get any Chihuahua, right, for any years, right? For yeah, no bulldogs or golden retriever. Yeah, yeah. But if you're doing artificial selection using our knowledge and technology, you can almost get a Chihuahua by just few months, right? By breeding the correct dogs. Yeah. So that's one example of artificial selection. And other thing is not natural and artificial selection is not just work on animals, right, or humans. It also works like in plants. So like crops. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember there's this plant in okay, because sometimes I visit my mother's grave in Laguna. And then there's this certain tree that in the cemetery, there's this certain tree that the people were kind of like bragging about. They say that, oh, the pride of Burma, the name of the tree. Oh, the this tree came from the US and it was brought here. And I'm like, seriously? And then when I searched for it, uh, it looked different. The pride of Burma, it looked different. Like, how is this become that? How? And then I guess the environment, like the tropical, I'm not sure where it actually came from, of course. I don't know. Maybe people did, I'm not sure. But when I searched for the actual Pride of Burma, it looked different from that. So I guess it's kind of like it evolved to the environment. Like, oh, the tree is now experiencing um tropical weather, extreme heat, and it looked different. But when you bring it to its origin, I don't know, I guess it would look more like the ones in Google search or something.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm not sure. How would you count, something like that? Is it natural or is it artificial? Now that you're bringing that tree in a different environment.
So,
Both seems like it.
Yeah.
Because it still managed to survive, but differently. It
Yeah.
looked different, but you search it. Ah, eh?
Yeah, yeah. It's like really artificial generally. I mean, most likely because artificial is about forcing nature in our like there's an intervention. Yeah,
Kind of like Chihuahua.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So this is like the desire to progress, right? So any human being, you ask even kids, right? Especially kids, we have all this burning desire to be on the top, right? So yeah, this is like the survival of the fetus, right? Because in any field, singing, right, painting, writing books, right, or engineering, or like doctors, right? Those who are in the top 10%, right, will almost take 90% of the wealth, right, or income. And that's really like the concept of survival of the fetus. Those who are the fittest, right, will be uh, capable of surviving in the long run, right? So we humans kind of study for years, right? Like we go to universities, right? Train ourselves, get a job, and train ourselves again and again, right? To be on the next level every year, right? And that's kind of raises to a question of like how much is enough, right? Because I think we already stated earlier that we have only one life, right? And somehow you need to balance that desire to progress. Because I see some workers, right? Like one of the motivation of this event is that I usually walk every 6 p.m., right? Maybe around this Paseo de Rojas. I see people just work all their lives, right? You can see it from their faces that all this want is to like be in the top, right? For progress. And somehow, for me, kind of a evolution kind of betrayed us on that regard that we just work all our lives and forget to enjoy. Yeah, actually, it's kind of a measurable actually that how much money you can have now so that you can live for the rest of your life, right? Yeah, for billionaires, they can live even for 100 lives more, right? So, but humans are not designed to just stop working, right? If you have that enough wealth, right? We're not designed to just sleep. We are actually designed to work. Almost 50% of our height is designed for walking, to meet other people and to relocate ourselves, right? That's our main advantage compared to other species, right? But of course, other species are faster. But for humans, we are designed to plant vegetables, right, in the savannah or uh, harvest fruits, right? Yeah, I think that's a kind of a we are designed to progress, right? It's our built in our psychological deeper being, right? And it is linked with our survival instincts. Yeah.
yeah, fun right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I was kind of thinking about like, wow, evolution took intelligence to the extreme. Like, we did not need to be smart to survive, but shit, maybe we did. You know, like the only reason, the only way we have true longevity as a human species is to get off this planet. And the only way to get off this planet is to, build iPhones and rockets, like, so like maybe evolution is like maybe evolution has some foresight of like, we really need to be intelligent to
Yeah,
survive.
yeah. Somehow our cognitive skills evolve based on mainly for survival, right? To recognize pattern. It's like there's a if this is the terrain, the next will be danger, right? So our brain kind of designed in that manner. So we just kind of extrapolate this information and use our knowledge, right? And eventually become intelligent. Like we can now use numbers and understanding physics and stuff.
This point, this 4.5 billion year history of the planet Earth, it became like so intelligence took over as the primary like evolutionary advantage to survive. And then from that point on, evolution was the goal of evolution was to optimize ability.
Yeah.
So whatever that pivot point was, where you finally nailed intelligence enough that it gave you a better survival chance. From there, evolution's like, all right, now how do I optimize this? And then you get this human brain.
Mhm.
There's just no stopping the train of optimization, intellectual optimization.
Yeah, yeah.
And then like,
Full force.
I like to think of it like you know how computers before they were had to be hardwired before. Then once you get to like a certain point, people invented like general purpose computers. So you just load like the code into the memory and it just does that. I think humans are kind of like that because you have code like through culture. So through have traditions and cultures and like best practices, that becomes like how you do things. And if if you need to change things up, yeah, you can just change the thing. You don't have to evolve another million years.
Yeah.
A different thing, like ants or bees or
Yeah. This is kind of a weird example of, I guess, artificial evolution. Is culture.
yeah.
Yeah, so like you said, like you can quickly adapt or quickly like reprogram if you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't need 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in some cases, with how efficient we are with communication and language, I can reprogram you in minutes. You know, like if need be, like hey, time to do something different so we don't all die. You know.
Have you given like an iPad to a toddler?
Yeah.
He will figure it out in like 3 days.
I think there's a theory about like a programmer, like God type programmer, that we are all programs. Like the whole universe is kind of all these particles are coded to actually a theory, right? Like in a hologram something.
Hologram.
Yeah.
Like
Up tier evolution being that can manipulate this data, something.
well, I think the most likely case that the universe just started was really basic.
Mm.
Just flat out basic axioms like here's a few fundamental forces, here's some energy, just run with it. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what happened.
So you're a naturalist, yeah? You're a naturalist. Or
what?
you're a naturalist, something.
A naturalist.
Yeah.
Extreme, yes.
Extreme.
I would so far say I'm a poetic naturalist.
Oh, really? That's really cool, yeah?
Yes.
You put a name on it.
Somebody. My favorite physicist, Sean Carroll, if you've ever heard of him.
Ah, Sincaro. I read a book from him, yeah.
I read him.
Hayden something.
Sorry?
Hayden something.
Something Deeply.
Yes, I mean.
It was
Yeah.
one book. But his book, The Big Picture, is just really takes in everything.
That's good. That's cool.
So I'm borrowing the term naturalist and poetic naturalism from him. He's the one that.
Ah, that's really cool. Yes, he's a naturalist to
Yeah,
the deep level.
it was more like common term is physicalism.
Yeah.
Where basically the natural world is this and this is all there is.
Yeah,
It's the natural
yes.
And poetic naturalism just tries to make that more like digestible. It tries to make that more like literally what it says, poet, like more romanticized.
Yeah.
Like the natural world is all that there is, but also that's still very beautiful.
Yeah,
So
yes,
you
yes.
don't need to invent more things beyond the natural world to create, color and feeling and passions.
Ay, nasa nakakapi ako.
Okay. I think this one is a little bit serious slide, I would say. In a jungle, right? If you see a grass moving, and you assume that it's just the wind that caused the grass to move, and it's actually a predator. a lion or something. So you will be in a great danger, right? So if you assume that, oh my God, it's just at the moment, yeah, yeah, yes, it's time. It's like a yeah. Somehow there's a survival value when we try to assume that bad thing could happen, right? So people are actually more negative. We like bad news, right? And good news are in the 10th page of the newspaper, and we're more interested that people died fighting each other, right? And there are some diseases coming up, but you never see coming the new discoveries, right? It's only seldomly seen or posted. So we have this kind of a negativity bias because it kind of more interested on survival, right? Learning on new things, so it adds up to our vocabulary, right? So we can avoid these things. And yeah, those ancestors, right, that don't fear enough heights, poison, disease, right, or like typhoon, are all dead, right? So there's a survival value on fearing enough, right? But of course, some people put them in an extreme condition where they just live in fear, right? And that is not good. And of course, these are just for rare cases, right?
Is
And
it the strongest fighting force you think?
for me, yeah, emotionally,
Mush.
yeah, yeah. Because we can operate in a kind of a in only fear, right? We can operate almost automatically. If we say a snake, we kind of a jump and trigger our emotional desire to survive.
It's very uncontrollable.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of intertwined to our system. Like we are built for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Disclosure, I actually joined a doomsday prepper group. Sweet. In the Philippines, yes. There was a doomsday prepper group pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And then we do like bi-yearly meetups.
Bi-yearly. Wow.
By yearly. That's really often. Eh?
Six meetup.
What would y'all do?
Some would sell MREs. Some would sell knives. It's here. There are gun shows, so that's not the thing. It's not part of the thing. In the U.S., but there are doomsday purple group. They really do sell guns and all that. And they talk about like building their bunkers, all
Yeah,
those
yeah.
things. It's more low key, I guess. It's about knives and like properly preparing in case of in kind of event like the earthquake or yeah. I do.
You know, so I'm really big into the AI space, especially as a software dude. I've even had jobs coding AI crap, and I get, I've had like talks and presentations and conferences and all this. And definitely the most common question I get is, is AI gonna kill us? I'm like,
Yeah, yeah. That's the fear that's actually emerging from this current era. That
12% of people say thank you to the AI.
fear's fear.
It takes over, they'll remember. Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I was at a conference thing speaking, and I told him I think there's a 10% chance.
Yeah, to add with this slide, it's like there's an ultimate form of survival, right? Like the very top form of survival, and that is to survive through death, right? So, which is all human being fear death, right? So it is like extreme conditions that we fear like a lifelong, right? That somehow we need to accept that sooner or later our consciousness will cease to exist, right? And of course, religious people or TS people offer this kind of a ultimate form of survival. That is when your consciousness kind of a transcend to a higher reality, and be with the most powerful being in the universe, right? Or simply God. So, yeah, we fear this because that's the end of our life, right? And that's the ultimate form of survival. And should kind of worry about, you know, sometimes worry about thinking about this uh, concept. Yeah.
I heard this great book by Ernest Becker called The Denial of Death. You ever heard of it? And
Maybe once.
like the whole premise of this book is that you do everything you do in life is because of your fear of death. You
Oh,
know,
really?
like and quite literally, like so you think about like why do you want to oppress someone? It's fear of death. Why do you build some civilizations? Fear of death.
Yeah,
Why do
yeah.
you build a condominium? Fear of death. So it goes through this process of arguing like literally everything we do. And
Is that a hard read or like psychologically damaging or?
so Ernest Becker, he is a psychologist.
Mhm.
So like he borrows entirely from arguments from Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, and builds up this kind of argument that we do everything because we want to deny the fact that we're going to die because we're terrified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same for for depression. Even though most people with depression, most, not everyone, of course, but some, okay, I'll put it that way, some would like to die, try have multiple suicide attempts or even suicide ideation. But yeah, but it's pretty ironic because they actually fear the exact thing that it's a vicious cycle. They want to end their life, but if they end their life, what?
Yeah. We don't know what's beyond that.
Yeah.
I think the bright side of that is like since we have only one life, right? We should enjoy most. This is kind of a more
Consciousness into like a future or following yourself.
yeah. Yeah, that's really a thing. Yeah.
So if you start downloading, what if you diverge and this guy has my memory, but I have my own memory? Like,
Anybody here watch Black Mirror?
and only episodes, yeah.
They love that concept. Yeah, they're built their entire series based on that concept. You can just redo your lives.
Redo.
Yeah.
Restart.
It's just really, really just hard to imagine that that's not going to be a reality in the next 100 years.
Yeah.
I just don't see how, that isn't going to be true at some point.
Hopefully, Elon Musk doesn't invent it. Sorry, I keep bringing him up because
He's a great.
He's your idol, yeah? He's your idol?
people. It's not mine, but like my niece, she really idolized him for a long time, for a good bit. Like
For being rich or for being smart?
the Tesla thing, the next
Okay.
thing, and this happened. So she's like super quiet about it.
He's just
Okay, cool. Yeah, this kind of a touch how social human beings are. Yeah, I'm not sure about your story, but for me, I work at home also. I teach online, and sometimes my social energy is kind of a draining every time I spend days, right? So there's a kind of a missing piece that I need to go out and meet other people like you guys, right? And meet people with same interests. And after the event, right, we feel like kind of energized, right? Even though we are physically tired, or of course we are physically tired because of the interaction, but psychologically, right, there's something being satisfied for interacting with other people. And if you go back to our ancestors, right, those people who live alone, right, or does not belong to any tribe, are more likely to be attacked by predators like wolves, or even by fellow human beings. And in ancient Egypt, right, or ancient Babylonia, human being kind of socialized in this near the river, right, to use this rich, beautiful soil, right, for farmlands. And if you forward in time, right? Human being, like society are built, churches are built, and even this Makati city is built because there are humans in the human in the past want to socialize and do some business, right? So that's how important social life is in human interactions, right?
I wouldn't say it's support. I would say it's everything.
Ah, yeah, yeah,
That's true.
yeah,
Literally no chance of survival.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
without
That's true.
and that's probably why the agricultural revolution is just the greatest turning point in all of any other point in human
Yeah.
history is because it allowed for like that social coalescence,
yeah,
you know, where we didn't have to be in the plains. We can
Yeah.
just sit and talk. And then when you sit and talk, you really start to like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. We are here to socialize, right? To kind of refresh our brain because outside like money, 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 like work, 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 right? Then it's good to meet other people.
Children, I'm not sure, but at least growing up as a Filipino, I remember getting compared with more social children, saying, "This kid is friendlier than you. Why don't you have friends? Why don't you have friends? Look at your neighbor. More friends." So parents can see that like a social, if you as a kid don't have friends or no one plays with you, then socially you're basically dead. And that affects the parents' rank as well. Like parent be like, "Oh, my child is not social, therefore that is something about me."
Your parents are narcissists. Sleeper dog.
Yeah, hope not, but yes.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a downside about socializing, which is like we form kind of a tribalism concept. And tribalism, yeah,
Mhm.
and yeah,
The world right now is tribal.
yeah, 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 that's right.
but it's pervasive. Literally everything.
Yeah,
It is so disgustingly pervasive. Even in like something as maybe trivial as like programming. In my world, people are like, "What language you code in?" It's like politics.
Yes.
I was like, "I ain't telling you what language I code in. You're gonna tribalize me by."
yeah, yeah. That's one example. Yeah, that's one example of tribalism.
It's like so trivial and so meaningless. You know, it's still being like tribalized.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the moral issue here is like moral problems for me. I believe are actually emergent from tribalism. One example is like when the white people arrive in Africa, right? They treat these black people as a lesser species, right? So they convert them as slaves, and you know the story very well, right? And so slavery is not just back to Europe, right? It goes down back to times of the Greeks, right? It's been here since the beginning of human history, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just because we treat other human beings as lesser than ourselves, right, or higher than ourselves. So even religion, right, can be considered as tribalism, and like Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, right? It's like, or even sex, right? Like gender can be considered as tribalism if you put them in extreme condition, like male and female are fighting for weird stuff, right? That doesn't need to be there, right?
My my sister married a Cebuano. Well, technically Lamongan, but she moved to Lamongan or Cebu. So she married a Cebuano and had Cebuano children, and the Cebuano children are incredibly pliable.
Yeah,
Being Cebuano.
I remember coming to Cebu, and
Let's be Tagalog.
yeah.
and you know, no matter of our sexual orientation, we will have the desire to be sexually satisfied, right? And emotionally satisfied, right? And we almost spend the rest of our lives looking for our partner. And once we find our partner, we stay them for the rest of our lives, right? So it's our nature to think about this one, right? To discuss about this one. And of course, there are criterias, right? I think we already discussed a little bit on this one, where for even for species like birds, right? Birds or like crabs, right? A male selection is like they select a partner based on capable of reproducing, and on a female side, right? Usually they select more colorful birds, right? Like you can see from peacocks, right? And those male birds that are more colorful, more beautiful songs, right? More beautiful territory, are more likely to get a partner, right? But of course, in human side, right? Uh, Females select like a provider type male counterparts, and that's pretty much reasonable for women because women take the risk of childbirth, right? They take the risk of reproducing, right? It's a painful delivery, something. I think Crystal have a complaint for that.
The
Yeah.
underrated thing.
I'm not sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not sure if there's a philosophy about women about philosophy like being practical, right? That they will. You can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not women. You can see from my physique.
Yes, if you're gonna spout out any misogynist shit, I'm gonna. I'm not afraid.
So he's making a comment about this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's very word.
I think yeah, I think there's a kind of a philosophy, right? Maybe only represents few women that it's rather for them. It's better for them to select a partner that like being practical, right? Just select a partner that's rich or have money, right? I'm not representing all the women, right? Maybe only few, the left part of the distribution, right? Of course, yes. Yeah, the right part of the distribution is like the woman that doesn't care, right? That also are capable of doing their job, right? Or who totally doesn't care because they can provide also for themselves, right? But the average, right, is like they consider like a provider type and they can protect themselves. Is that something you feel?
Aman, amatonormativity, look it up. Amatonormativity is this pressure, at least, okay, because I'm a woman, I think I can speak about it. Um, there's this there's this pressure, you see, growing up as a young girl, watching, women media. What are these women-oriented media? What are they? Mostly romantic films. And most romantic films are like, this planet's gonna save my ass. It's always because you're right, looking for a provider type. But I think me growing up, it's kind of like a subliminal way. Media is a subliminal way of saying, oh, girls, look whom to pick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think, sure, yeah, the provider type, but it's getting more and more intensified. Like watching films, media.
And competition against tribes become really intense, right? Especially if you are fighting against a scarce commodity, right? And people will kill, right? Or just to get that food, right? You can see this around in Africa or like scarce water, food, right? And what's the commodity in religion is, especially in Islam and Christianity, is none other than the one God, right? The all-powerful God. And we can see in the history fighting religion like Crusades, the Inquisition, right? It shows that we can kill, right, for that claim, right? So yeah, one of the reasons why religious is like we have kind of a big brother concept, right? That anytime I can just close my eyes and ask for uh, you pray and you get kind of a form of survival, right? So somehow religion offers kind of a notion of like survival, right? That you can just ask God and let your worry be gone, right?
I think that's more prevalent with people or countries or groups that do not receive the even the basic things that they would need.
Yeah.
Like for example, okay, again, I'll use my my own example here because what else? I've had students, Japanese students, tell me, I rode a Grab. Okay, you rode the Grab, very nice. What's that thing that they put in front of in their mirrors? The rosary. They were talking about the rosary. What's that thing? Um, you see, it's a religious, but we don't need religion. And that's a freaking 15-year-old telling me, but we don't, I don't see the need. I don't think we need that. And no, 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 kid. You see, that Grab driver that you got, he doesn't know where he'll get his next meal, man. And of course, they belong to a first world country
Yeah.
with basically every single thing in Maslow's hierarchy. Like the lowest one was met, food, security, shelter. It's already met. Then they wouldn't really need to like pray for the rice for the next day.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's-
If you're a Grab driver, especially if you do rounds at night, it's dangerous.
Yeah, yeah, that too. Yeah, that's the second one.
In Japan, you kind of don't have to worry about that.
Yes, that's the second
Yeah.
one. You have to pray that
Yeah. Wishful
no
thinking.
sweet potatoes will come crash my car. No, seriously, when I drive, I usually think of that. Okay, I'm gonna start everything. It's like, I wish there's no sweet potato.
So if you look survival, right? Survival of the fittest in the surface, you cannot see any moral story, right? Because survival is about killing each other, killing the weak, right? Especially the one that cannot protect themselves. So you can see in the jungle, like a giraffe, right? Hunted by wolves. Since giraffe are big, right? They cannot be killed instantly. So they suffer like painful, slow death, right? Through wounds. And that's really sad, right? If you see on humans' perspective, right? And you can see like babies, right? That inherent or kids inherent disease, right? Or a gene from their parents that cannot survive in the few years, right? Like maybe kids like have leukemia or cancer. So there's actually a savagery in kind of a survival of the fetus, right? That the weak kind of does not survive in the long run. And so, you know, the moral issue, right, in survival of the fetus only kind of emerges to when we treat each other as like a one species, right? We already share that like slavery occur because we treat other human being as lesser than ourselves, right? So we can have a complete moral arguments in terms of Darwinian perspective when we treat all our human as one, right? So there must be a sense of oneness to achieve these moral stories, right? And one more thing is like once we understand that Earth is the same as 1 billion years ago, right? So we have limited resources. So and the population of human being is increasing and increasing. So there's a moral story when we try to treat like our food as like treating our animals as morally as possible, right? Because if we don't treat them, we in the next few years, right, we will be out of food, right? Because survival, right, or Darwinian is actually a short-term goal, right? Bacteria or viruses evolve depend on the current conditions, right? And human beings select our mates based on our own preference, right? That's a really short-term goal. And to survive, right, in a short-term goal, we try to poison our river just to collect more fish, right? We poison our ocean. We cut all the trees, right, to survive. And once we done that, right, the future generation will suffer, right? So we must understand that we must also look at the long term, right, than just a short term of evolution. yeah, that's pretty much the idea of this moral issues. You want to add something?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I feel like in my head, where morals come from is a solved problem. It's
Yeah, yeah,
solved. It's I just think it's obvious that it's just a form of cooperation.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So if we can rephrase the question of morality as a question of cooperation, and it applies the exact same.
yeah,
So like, and this solves a lot of like outstanding questions that people tend to have. Like, why is it moral to, why is it immoral to kill your dog, but not a pig or whatever?
yeah, yeah,
Well, if you phrase it in the terms of cooperation, it makes perfect sense. Like if I kill your dog, you're gonna be really mad at me,
yeah, yeah,
But if I kill your pig, you might have hired me to do that.
yeah. Okay.
Um, yeah, I do agree that what people know what moral is basically, is it just we live in a world of time with like misinformation though. A lot of like misinformation, so it's kind of clogging that issue. Clouding that issue.
Well, I think if you could just ask any question of like, is something moral and immoral? And then rephrase it, is it cooperative or non-cooperative? And I think you can answer that question. Like you
Yeah,
can pick any moral ever.
Uh, the trolley thing, the trolley problem,
The what problem?
the trolley problem. You know the trolley.
When you kill one person or five people.
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
say that is not
By-
moral at all.
by
I was-
pulling a lever, you divert it. You save three people, but it kill one person.
Right. So I would say that the trolley problem has nothing to do with morals. I would say that's a completely different problem.
Okay.
But let's rephrase it.
Okay.
Let's phrase it as cooperative, non-cooperative, or uncooperative. Well, in that term, is it more cooperative to kill one person or three people? So like, then maybe it's more cooperative to kill one person than three people. In that case, I would say the trolley problem is a solved problem. You kill one person instead of three.
mm,
If you rephrase it in terms of cooperative,
You have to perform an action to kill that person, therefore it's kind of manslaughter.
The only moral outcome of that is that if you end up killing yourself, like stopping the trolley.
So to stop the trolley, you need to sacrifice yourself.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's not the most ideal one, but it's the only one way you
that's
don't
not
kill
an
somebody
option.
else.
Your only option for
Yeah, but if you're like somewhere like very far off, and that's
Yeah.
you're looking at all this through remotely through online or like a camera.
I also kind of disagree with the whole concept of the trolley problem because it's just so inapplicable to reality. No one ever is in that position.
Yeah, kind of a thought experiment. Yeah.
It's like,
It's not exactly that, but you do have like choices, right?
no, not like that. You know, you're never going to make that choice ever in your life. I promise you. So I don't know. The trolley problem is just one of those where I almost find it inapplicable.
It's a good interesting
Thought experiment. That's sure, 100%. And you're right. It does take an action to basically in someone's life or do nothing, but nothing.
It's negligence.
It's technically an action. So I have two actions: do this or do that.
Because
Yeah.
like you're running for example a nuclear plant.
Yeah.
And you have to dump things outside. But if you dump things outside, people get affected. But if you don't do it, the whole thing gets out. Hurt more people.
Yeah, but there are certain ways to dispose in nuclear ways.
Yeah, right. But you will hurt people. Yeah, doing so.
There are different concept of moral definitions, right? Because some people have actually different concept of moral. Like you, yeah, like you say that moral is about cooperation, right?
I
Something
would
to
say
do.
we could rephrase any question on morality as a question of cooperation, and it works exactly. That's my argument. Uh, I'm happy
Yeah.
to be wrong.
For some scientists, like Sam Harris, claim that what is more important is to reduce as much as possible the human suffering, right? That is more moral than like
That's more
yeah,
like military.
morally good objective. Yeah.
Yeah, suffering is tricky one. That's very subjective,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and also You know, like you get your suffering concepts back
Yeah, yeah,
in moderation. You know.
yeah, yeah. Because we all suffer, right? Like
Yeah,
only a matter of magnitude, right? And some people suffer much than others.
but it's like it's a great way to learn. It's a little bit so maybe in moderation. You
Yeah,
don't spend your whole life being tortured. Yeah, morality just happens to be one of the things where I just really think it's kind of a song.
Like,
yeah,
they must have think their own version of like makes sense. It's
But
common
that's
sense.
why cooperation works even better.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Because what's cooperative in this society is moral, but it may be immoral in this society. That's because it's not cooperative in this society. And like, I just cannot find an argument that makes no sense when you phrase them.
Yeah, kind of a, yeah,
Would be like would be like tipping. Tipping is a way to like say thank you to somebody.
Yeah.
But if you do it in a different like this country, kind of an insult because you're saying I don't get paid enough for this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Different philosophy.
Here, it's tipping. I tip because I appreciate the service.
Yeah. It's a show of gratitude.
Yeah.
I learned that the hard way as well.
Oh, what?
About tipping. For example, I come from England, so like tipping is kind of you can do it, but it's not enforced yet.
And first,
America, I believe tipping is more encouraged, right?
Stronger than encouraged. It's
Yeah.
like look down on if you don't do it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
When you get to Japan, they don't like tipping at all.
Yeah.
It's kind of insult, right?
Yeah.
Form of insult. Okay. It's like so what's next, right? After evolution. So what's next? Do we still continue to evolve, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we still are, right? Because our genes are passed to the next generation to the generation. Some gene can be erased and some gene can maintain and evolve and we get a different set of gene, right? So like in modern times, right? Like climate change, it's really hot now, right? Maybe human being can adapt to a harsh environment like extreme hot condition, right? Or extreme cold conditions. And now, of course, the AI, right, taking our jobs, right? So maybe we adapt to a more information processes, right? We evolve into a superhuman, right? That can process information just in few seconds, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I mean, COVID made us because when COVID hit, you can feel the panic. You can feel the panic, like, oh, we're gonna fucking die. That level of panic, and we're losing toilet paper. We're losing toilet paper while we're dying slowly. Okay, but I think because medicines, vaccines are now
yeah, yeah.
evolving accordingly. So yeah, it's still we would definitely survive the next, and yeah, maybe.
Yeah, there's an important analysis, right? Because if you compare to our closest species, right, the gorilla, right, which is on chimpanzee. So gorilla, we have a difference of around 3%, right? Only 3% difference, and you can already see the physical difference of this 3%, right? And from chimpanzee, around 1.3, maybe 1.2.
Mm.
So if we evolve into a higher being, right, that only consists of 3% difference. So imagine the difference, right? So we could be a little bit smarter, right, or capable of using an AI in an easy thing to do task. So any projections about future times?
Because I've been hanging around in Reddit for the past 3 weeks. It's so annoying. And then I've seen people who are like, oh, I learned that I'm depressed. So I talked to ChatGPT about it.
It's very encouraged. Don't
Did you say thank you? Say thank you, yeah.
I trauma dump. ChatGPT. That way I don't have to hire
You say we're going to enter an age of abundance when it comes to therapeutic solutions because you might, yes, a human might be a better therapist, but AI is cheaper.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. New psychologist, yeah. Yeah, and then just charge you. Even say thank you. Yeah.
has, yes, it has no emotional,
Attachment.
attachment. I mean, it has no capability. It doesn't have a bad day. It doesn't have a bad day. That's what some big, nothing else to think about, like even stuff.
Like I personally see both. See both. Like I do take human therapy. I have to specify that now. But I also do talk to ChatGPT sometimes, and it's usually when I really want to talk about something, but my therapists aren't available. And yes, there's the cost involved, and ChatGPT it's cheap, but at the end of the day, they're not human. And I have ADHD and autism and such, and I'm never going to learn how to human from a robot. I need to talk to other human beings, and that's going to come up with a lot of caveats. But it also, when I'm talking to another human being, it helps me to regulate myself, and that's why I'm willing to do both. Really.
Yeah.
This is just something you can't, because like, I think when you talk to a human, there is that element of that human is kind of judging me in some way, and that applies some constraint, and they're like, you know. But when you're talking to a human, you can there's an empathy there, that you can associate that, and there's no empathy with ChatGPT, and that's a huge drawback.
Yeah. The psychological factor.
It's like sometimes empathy is,
So I low key tell my students, oh, one day you'll have AI teachers. And then here's the thing, because in Japan I've noticed that the way my students behave themselves is that their teachers are really detached to them. And then when they come here to the Philippines, they notice, Filipinos represent, how teachers are in here, right?
yeah, they can be.
I mean, they're, friendlier, chill, like someone you can actually talk to, but of course, with the professional distance, but someone you can actually consult. So my students tell me, oh, we can never do that. It's unthinkable. Because I work in an international school and they see students actually hanging out with their professors during lunchtime. Like, hey, ma'am, hey, sir, good afternoon. Fix your uniform. My students say, oh, that thing is unthinkable in Japan.
They eat separately.
Yes. I got asked one time by a student, why do you teachers hang out during lunch break? Huh? You mean we can't? And then he told me, oh, nothing, because it looks in Japan, that looks unthinkable. And I'm like, what? But, but what?
Yeah, remember.
But when I told them, oh, but when I told them that they yeah.
Turned off.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay. It's time to go anyways. Yeah. He's probably gonna wrap up. Yeah.
Yeah.